Yoga is effective for osteopenia and osteoporosis. In the last 10 years, we've discovered that working on strength, especially in standing poses, has such a positive effect on bone density in the hip area and in the spine. For those of us that have found that the bone density is changed in women after the age of 50 and men after the age of 70, yoga is an approach that we can all use to create stronger structure, stronger bones. Let's begin a practice to focus on our bone strength. And let's come all the way down to our belly to begin. So, as you do, as you come to your belly, just to allow your arms to be in the Sphinx pose with your forearms pressing, with your fingers pressing. As you draw from your fingertips to your elbows, draw your heart forward. Sometimes we get very kyphotic, very rounded in the upper back. So just by starting your practice by pulling the elbows toward your hips, and just getting a nice opening of the chest. That allows us to just kind of receive the breath more fully, the breath that nourishes you so fully. So keep the forearms pressing. Now let's get the legs more active. As you tuck your toes under, see about lifting your knees up. And that's all you have to do. Just keep your pelvis on the earth for now with your knees lifted, with your elbows drawing toward your hips. Draw your heart forward to do just a nice opening of the upper chest. Now take your knees down to the mat, interlace your fingers, and as you press your forearms down, take your elbows just slightly narrower than your shoulder width and come up to all fours position. As you come up to all fours position, reach your right leg straight back. Now draw in from the right toes to the right hip and just get this nice engagement of the leg. Release your knee down and try that with the other side. Tuck your toes under. Draw in from the foot all the way to the pelvis to get that engagement. And once you get that engagement, reach out from the pelvis to the heel. Now come back to both knees on the earth. With your knees down, tuck your toes under. And as you slowly lift your pelvis up, you can come just slightly up if you wish. That certainly has a nice engagement of the legs, a nice lifting of the pelvis. You can come toward a straight leg version, maybe even walk your feet in slightly. Just release your head. And as you press your forearms down with the pelvis lifted, knees again can be bent if you wish. You want to pull the feet in toward the midline as you lift your pelvis up even higher. And maybe lifting one leg just to get that more fullness in your inversion. Release the leg down, take the other leg up. Just shine by spreading your toes, drawing in from the toes to the pelvis, all the way to the heart. Then reach out from the heart all the way to the toes. Release down, come back through a plank position on your forearms and lower your pelvis down. Place your hands right alongside your ribs with your fingers spread. Inhale, lift your heart, and exhale, release down. Now reach your hands straight back to come to Shalambhasana. Inhale, rise up as you reach back. Exhale, soften. Two more times. Inhale with the fingers engaged, with this engagement of the fingers all the way as you draw in from the fingertips to the heart. You lift up and soften. And one more time. Inhale, lift up, and exhale, soften. Make your way to a standing pose. And as you do, you can come through downward facing dog, whatever it works for you. Come all the way to standing. And as you stand in Tadasana, look at the engagement of your feet as the feet stay parallel, the toes are spread. So you draw in from the feet all the way to the pelvis. Get that engagement from the periphery to your core. Now also hug the feet in toward each other. So your legs are as strong as they can be. As you reach your arms up, you can have your hands nice and wide apart as you bend your knees. And as you keep this nice engagement, drawing in from the toes to the pelvis, hugging the midline with the feet, you keep the strong engagement of the legs and you drop a little bit lower and root down to rise up. Release your hands. Sometimes people that have osteopenia or osteoporosis need a little support. If you've got a wall close by, you can take your pelvis to the wall. If a wall's not close by, just do that same pose as you reach your arms up. Take your hands nice and wide apart, and you can hold the pose a little bit longer. You can keep that hugging in action, feet hugging in toward each other as you engage the legs so fully, as you take your hands even wider apart and you engage and tone the muscles of the arms by spreading the fingers so fully. Root down to inhale and rise up. Exhale, release your hands. Another thing that you might, if you've got a chair, even if it's an upholstered chair near you, try this. Find a chair to sit in. And as you do that same chair pose that we were doing, one of the things, there's compression fractures that occur a lot of times when people just kind of plop into the chair, and there's a lot of weight hitting all of a sudden, and the spine is kind of rounded. So just learning how to get in and out of a chair, really important to protect the spine. So this pose that we were doing, drawing from the toes to the pelvis, hugging the midline with the legs, as you gain that strong action of the legs before drawing the pelvis down. You can take your arms up if you wish, but that's not necessary. As long as you keep the legs really active, maybe you can drop down a little bit lower. So as you go slowly down toward the chair, you're not plopping into the chair. And as you go out through your day, this would be a really good thing to work on, especially in those heavily upholstered chairs or couches, that sort of thing. So you keep a nice elongation of the spine as you come forward, you keep that elongation. Again, you can use your hands, or in most cases, you're using your hands behind you to lift off, but see if you can use your arms to lift off the chair, keeping the legs really strong and engaged. Come to this chair pose with a nice alignment of the spine as you root down to rise up. Release your hands. And if you've got a wall or a chair by you, we use those same principles to balance. Now, sometimes in balancing poses, I of course prefer to do it freestyle, but if you need something close by you, like a chair, that's perfectly fine. Let's start by rooting down through the right leg and just take the left foot just at a slight angle. And again, you can have one hand on the chair to keep you balanced as you keep the standing leg really strong. Find out for yourself, like what makes the most sense if you can take your foot really high and hug the midline, draw the inner right thigh to the left foot by all means. And you can either hold on or come to a nice fullness in your standing pose. Just allow the standing leg to be so solid. And if you come out of the pose, you want to slowly come back into the pose. You hug the midline, either using the wall or chair, expand again. So as you do, as you keep the legs really active, practicing your balance on one leg, and now let's practice on the opposite leg. So as you come to a standing pose, one of the areas that we want to be really concerned with, or the three areas actually that are the most prone to fractures, are the hip area, the back, and wrists. So by coming to our forearms like we did to protect the wrists, but yet gain strength in the mid-thoracic area, that protects the wrist. And in this action, by using the strength of the legs, again, you can use your chair or a wall. As you root down through the left foot, just start by putting a little bit more weight to the left leg. And as you're ready, you can just come to maybe a deeper version of the pose. Either hand to the chair, hand to the wall, your choice. Again, you can use your arms to help you in the balance action. Keep hugging in with that lifted foot, drawing in toward the standing leg. See how you can get so much fullness here. And of course, balance is so critical as our bone density declines because if we do have a fall, then it becomes a long restorative period to get our fracture back to its full operating capacity. Release your hands down. As it was mentioned, these standing poses are so important in yoga. And Dr. Loren Fishman has found out so much about the importance of these standing poses in the yoga practice. One of the things that he recommends that we not do is fast, repetitious sun salutes. Sun salutes are so much a part of the yoga practice. I've modified this sun salute so that we really slow it down so that we can incorporate a little bit of balance into it. As you come to the front of your mat, a slow sun salute. We'll do one. Inhale, sweep your arms up, reach your hands up and slightly back. Exhale, come down to the forward fold. Now, when you do, bend your knees, keep your spine as elongated as possible, almost like you're coming through a chair pose to do this forward fold. Step your right leg back to come to a lunge. Take your hands right above your left knee and balance yourself. So now we're balancing ourselves on two legs. Lunges are really critical in getting the legs really strong. So as you come to find your balance with your back legs strong, just with your hands right at your hip points, draw your elbows in toward each other. So you open your upper chest so fully. As you draw in from your toes all the way to the pelvis, see how you can expand and gain total freedom as you reach your arms up. Exhale, release your hands down. Come to a plank position. Plank positions are really vital in building strength. But if you feel like your wrists are not able to handle this, the things that we did right at the beginning by coming to our forearms is potentially a great option for you. Draw yourself down now so that your belly's on the mat. As you do, reach your hands straight back in Shalambhasana as a way to strengthen the spine with your hands reaching back. Your toes can be on the floor or off the floor, your choice. Inhale to strengthen the muscles that support the spine. Reach your hands back as you just get this nice lifting quality. Exhale, soften down. Two more times. Inhale, rise up as you reach your hands back. Exhale and soften. And one more time. Inhale, lift up. Exhale and soften. And as you come through all fours position, make your way to the front of the mat. And as you come to the front of the mat, find yourself once again in Tadasana, the standing pose. So this is a real modified version of the sun salute. Again, we're going really slow because according to the research, you really want to spend some time in these poses to strengthen rather than flexibility. We're working on getting the stronger stance and stronger engagement in the poses. Inhale, sweep your arms up and exhale with bent knees as if coming through that chair pose. Take your hands down and step your left leg back and balance yourself. Again, the lunge is a really strong engagement of the legs. You draw to the midline of the mat. You find this place of balance. And once you find it, you can find freedom in the upper body. You can reach your arms up if you wish with the fingers spreading. With the back leg strong, just soften yourself down just a little bit more. Keeping the back leg strong, softening more. Release your hands down to the mat and come to a plank position again. Or you can come to your forearms. See now, as you engage the arms really fully, you're pulling the hands toward the midline of your mat. You're lifting your heels and reaching your heels forward so your shoulders come slightly forward. Now slowly lower yourself down toward the mat. When you arrive at your mat, take your hands straight back. Again, come to Shalambhasana to build the strength of the muscles that support your spine and soften down. And again, inhale, lift up, exhale and soften. And one more. Inhale, lift up, and exhale, soften. With your hands alongside your ribs, make your way to the front of the mat in Tadasana in whatever way serves you nicely. And as you find your way to the front of the mat, pause and receive a nice in breath and out breath through the nose. And as you pause, you just kind of work to gain this feeling of drawing in from the earth, from the toes to the pelvis. And once you have that engagement, express fullness in your freedom as you reach your arms up in this very expressive Urdhva Hastasana with the hands reaching up and back. Exhale with bent knees. Take your hands alongside your ankles to step your right leg back and your left leg back to come to a plank once again. Pull your hands in toward the midline. Draw your heels forward. Lower yourself down very slowly. You know the options. If that doesn't work for the wrist now, inhale, reach your heart forward, and exhale. Come through all fours position to meet at the front of the mat. And once at the front of the mat, come to Tadasana first. And now take a wide stance on your mat. So in your wide stance, you're pulling into the midline. All these actions that we're doing now to protect the hip area, to build strength in the legs. We'll start with the right toes turning out and with your arms lifted as you come into Virabhadrasana number 2. And come to the opposite side. As you turn the left toes out, lift your arms up and come to the form of the pose. If you've got a block, I'll show you one of the actions that you could do with just a little support from the wall in this pose. So as you come out of the pose, the standard Virabhadrasana number 2 pose, take a block, and if you're by a wall, with the block at the wall, you can take your left foot on the block. With the left foot at the block, you come to the pose by bending the knee. And that's a little hard to see when I'm not facing you, but imagine that the wall is there. And this is a nice variation with a hand at the wall, with the foot slightly elevated on the block. You can get like a feeling of stability in the pose with the hand at the wall. And yeah, just get a little bit more freedom in the area of the hip and release. And let's come to the opposite side so you get the feeling of that pose here. So again, if you're by a wall with the foot right on the block at the wall, you come to the form of the pose. You hold the pose as you extend one hand to the wall, the other foot, the front foot is lifted. You just get nice engagement here. You're able to go into the form of the pose with a little bit more ease and a lot more stability. And come back to a nice wide stance. You don't have to have the block now. As you step wide, turn your right toes out. And of course, this is the pose, triangle pose, Utthita Trikonasana, that you'll find almost in every yoga class practically, where we pull the feet in toward the midline, where you extend your arms out with the arms nice and fully engaged. As you pull in from the front foot to the back, you get this nice engagement of the legs and lift the left arm up. Just invite now the heaviness of your head actually to be a way to strengthen your neck muscles. So rather than flop the head down, you want to engage the neck muscles. First, with your eye gaze, you look up toward the fingers, and now you turn the full head in that direction. First the gaze, and then the turning of the neck. Root down from the back leg to inhale and rise up. Come to the opposite side. So as you turn your left toes out, you pull in from the front foot to the back and draw down. And as you do, the back leg stays strong. The front leg is pulling in toward the back leg. You first just shift the gaze of your eyes up toward your lifted arm. And now you turn your head in that direction. And root down through the back leg to lift yourself up and release your hands down. Let's do one more standing pose. So all of these poses we do almost every class. You know, we've done tree pose, triangle pose, Virabhadrasana 2 pose, and now Parsvakonasana as you bend your right knee. You pull in, strong engagement there. Take your forearm down to the top of the thigh. Take the head of the left arm bone back. These actions that you do in standing poses really get strength in the legs, just really protects the hip joint so fully and build strength in those muscles that support the spine as you reach your arm over your head from the back foot all the way to the fingertips. You get the strong engagement from the back leg to inhale and lift yourself up and come to the opposite side as you bend your knee, pull in toward the midline, take your forearm down and reach your right arm straight up, reach over. In the study group that Dr. Loren Fishman worked with, all of these poses were very accessible to all. And he found in this study group, very positive correlation where those people that practice yoga, these 12 poses that he had given them, all of which are poses that you do practically every class. He requested them to do 12 poses, 12 minutes. So let's come to a seated pose now. We've worked the strength of our back. We've worked the strength of our legs. We've balanced. Start with your feet nice and extended straight. Now, when you do this, most of us, many of us, I'll say, have a rounding quality in the upper back. I always like for myself and probably for most of you to get a little elevation so I don't get so rounded in the upper back. Now, as you sit in Dandasana, this is the home base of seated poses. Now, in the original research done by Dr. Fishman, he had them do two forward bends in Janu Shirshasana and Paschimottanasana. They've found over time that it's so hard for people to keep a nice postural strength, a nice elongated spine. As you come to seated pose here with your strap, if you've got one, strap around your feet. If you don't have one, just take your hands right to your shin bones and see if you can sit as tall as possible with the legs very engaged. If you do have a strap, hold on to the strap again with the spine nice and elongated. You can bend your knees just slightly so they can get more curve, and you'll see that you'll be able to take the heads of the arm bones back and open the upper chest so much more fully in that pose. As you keep the spine nice and elongated, just draw your heart forward just slightly. Similar to the actions that we were doing right at the front of the class, sitting in the chair, trying to, with the knees bent, with the tailbone reaching back, with the heart open, you're keeping this nice elongation of the spine, not rounding the spine. Right? So rather than going all the way into this forward fold, we're just modifying it a whole bunch so that we can keep the actions of the leg really strong. And so the osteoporosis practice is not so much about flexibility as it is about gaining strength in all of the actions that we do. As you come to Dandasana again, one of the things that's a little bit more controversial in the research has been about twists. Some researchers are saying no twist, but they found actually very positive results in twisting actions as long as the spine stays elongated. So again, that's why it's so important to get a little lift under your pelvis. As you bend your right knee, just pause here. And the pose that we do, this version of Maritasana, as we draw the right knee in toward our ribs. We just first draw the left ribs toward the inner right knee. Take your right hand back. Keep the spine nice and elongated as you come to a very accessible twist. Now, of course, you can lift your left arm to get a little bit more space on the left side and take your left elbow there. But for many of us, that just creates a little bit of rounding. And especially if you bind in the pose, that will definitely cause some rounding in the upper back. They usually encourage us not to do that variation and come back to the center as you reach your right leg out. And one of the great things about twists is it builds these muscles that are diagonal support muscles for your poses. So as you stretch your right leg straight with the left knee bent and twist toward the bent leg, just to allow a nice elongation of the spine. You keep the legs so active. You're really pressing down through the base of the big toe on the bent leg, and you're drawing in from the spread toes of the right leg to the pelvis. So you feel the kneecap is lifting, the whole front side of the leg is very engaged, and you can release yourself out of the pose. And that is definitely the most accessible seated pose, seated twist that you can do. Let's come to lie on our back now. And Sutta Parangustasana, another pose that allows us to keep the spine in this very neutral form, very elongated form as you lift your right leg up. And now for some of us, if you don't have a strap, no problem. You can just interlace your fingers behind the leg. If you do have a strap, take it around the base of the right foot with the right foot lifted, with the left leg down. Engage first. Spread your toes. Now notice if you take your foot a little bit too far, you start to feel like the upper back start to press against your mat quite a bit. That is the spine going into its shorter form. We want to keep the spine in its nice elongated form so we're not compressing the disc at all. And take your strap in your right hand now, keeping the leg very active. Reach your leg over just slightly to the side. Now, if we go too far, you notice that one hip just kind of pops up and you kind of lose control of the extended and on the floor leg, the left leg. So just go slightly over and keep drawing in from the foot to the pelvis. It's all the same poses that we do in practically all the classes. And as you do them with that focus on the legs, that's what will protect your spine and your hip joint so nicely. And to protect the wrists, these areas where we have the three most common fractures, the back, the hip, and the wrists, you can modify each of these. And especially with the wrists, like I said, if that's too much for the wrists, you could come to your forearms. Come back to the center here with the foot and release your foot down so that you can just pause and just notice the difference here on that lifted leg compared to the opposite leg. Take your left leg up and just pause here. Again, if you don't have a strap, you can modify with the fingers interlaced behind the leg. And just kind of notice for yourself, it varies on each leg. You might have to take this leg further back to feel like you've got this nice elongated spine. If you take your foot too far forward, then you get spinal flexion. And again, that just kind of brings your vertebrae a little bit closer together. And we'd rather not have that. We want the more elongated version of the spine. So, as you gain strength in the leg by spreading the toes and drawing from the toes to the pelvis, take your strap around your lifted left foot and reach the foot over to the side, but just slightly. Don't want to go too far because if you do, you start to lose that energetic quality in the leg going to the side. Sutta Parangustasana, it's called. Has just a wonderful way of keeping the spine in this nice elongated form while you're still working the leg strongly. And of course, you really have to hold these poses for a while. And as you breathe in and out, just keeping this nice strong engagement of the leg before inhaling to take the leg back to the center position and let it just float down. And bend both knees with your feet parallel to each other, with your elbows alongside your ribs, with your palms facing each other. You want to engage the legs first. And I like doing this just with the pelvis on the floor first to see if I can get that feeling of the heels pulling in toward my pelvis first, right? They're pulling in, so I engage the back side of my legs, and we can lift the pelvis up just slightly. Now, for some of us, if we go too high, then all the pressure comes toward our neck. Keep the legs really active. For most of us, by keeping the pelvis down slightly, our legs stay a lot more active than pushing the pelvis up. It's harder to get that engagement. So find out for you, for the strength of your legs, for the strength of your hamstrings especially, see what works best. Maybe even taking your hands back to the backs of the legs so you can feel if there's engagement or not there. And as you're ready, just park your pelvis down very slowly to the mat and extend your legs out. As you come to a Shavasana that feels like a nice resting pose for yourself, all the work we did on engaging, drawing in from the fingers to the pelvis, from the toes to the pelvis, to get this full body engagement, we can now just kind of release. And certainly in the yoga practice, especially for those of us working on our bone strength, our bone density, we want a very engaged practice. The flexibility is nice, but it's more the strength that we work on. Through getting greater strength, you can gain more flexibility. As you breathe in and out through the nose, it allows you to assimilate these poses that you've always done in your yoga practice. But now, just with that intention and this focus on our bones, our structure, our alignment, it allows you to customize those poses that we do over and over for a very specific purpose: to strengthen your bones, to strengthen the hip joint, to strengthen the arms and the wrists, but especially to strengthen the spine. You breathe in deep and you breathe out long. You keep that awareness to your breath. Continue to enjoy this resting time in Shavasana. Namaste.